I'm Tracy Sable. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, high-stakes meeting. President Trump hosts the King of Jordan at the White House amid new concerns over the Israel-Hamas ceasefire deal. Sharp rebuke. Pope Francis criticizes the Trump administration's immigration enforcement policies. Risk analysis. We discuss national security concerns amid staff cuts to the FBI. And Marian apparition. Celebrate the feast day of Our Lady of Lourdes. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the Feast of Our Lady of Lourdes. We begin tonight with breaking news. Mark Fogel, an American school teacher and devout Catholic, is a free man. The White House made that announcement today that Fogel had been released from a Russian prison in exchange. Authorities arrested Fogel in August of 2021 at an airport in Moscow. They charged the American teacher from Pittsburgh with carrying a small amount of medical marijuana. His health declined significantly while serving his 14-year prison sentence. Last August, his sister talked to us about her brother's Catholic faith. You've been asking folks to keep his name out there, and we've been seeing him a lot in the news lately. Also, you've been asking for prayers. Tell us how important that is to you and your family, and the power of prayer, and how your Catholic faith has helped you during this very difficult time.
My mother says the rosary 2 to 3 times a day, but one of the times is at 9:30 p.m. With your station. And my brother, they have a mutual. They've picked a time that they say the rosary at the same time. Well, he's in Russia and she's in Pittsburgh, and I think it just. I know that it brings great comfort to both of them.
And Fogel is seen right here on the plane heading back to the U.S. in an extraordinary move. The special envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, personally went to Russia to get Fogel. Now, while we do not know what kind of exchange was made for him, a statement from National Security Advisor Mike Waltz said that it was, quote, a good show of faith from the Russians. And now we welcome Mark Fogel's mother, Melfine Fogel, and Sasha Phillips, their family attorney. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us now from your home in Butler, Pennsylvania. Melfine, I want to start with you. I know that you have been hoping and praying for this day for a very long time. How are you feeling right now? What are you feeling? And what did Mark say to you when you talked to him today?
Well, I'm feeling a little numb, to tell you the truth. But Mark called and he told me he was calling from the airport, which surprised me. He said, I'm waiting to get on a plane to go to Washington, D.C. So that was the news we've been waiting for 3.5 years. And he sounded pretty good. And I have to say, I'm a regular viewer of EWTN, and I'm glad to be on here.
Well, we're so glad to have you, Melfine, and we're so ecstatic that Mark has been released. We've all been praying for him as well. I want to go to you, Sasha, now. I know this has been a very long process for you all, and a lot of people were involved. It was a bipartisan effort for many years to get his release. Tell us what went into that, and ultimately his release today.
Well, so I could be here for a few hours talking to you if I went into all the details. There was a lot of behind-the-scenes work, but first and foremost, we would like to thank, of course, President Trump. He spoke to Melfine at the Butler rally to Mrs. Fogel, and he told her, this is before he went on stage and before that horrible assassination attempt, he told her that he is going to bring Mark home. He asked him to please remember her son's name and to please bring him home. He remembered Mark Fogel's name, and Mark is on his way home and into Melfine's arms today. Of course, Senator McCormick has been instrumental in all of this. Secretary of State Rubio, Representatives Kelly, absolutely, and Russian-Thaler, Chris DeLuzio, they have been absolutely wonderful. One thing I want to make very clear, this is not the end of the road. Mark will have to go through a fairly long rehabilitation process. He has gone through absolute hell. So we're going to call on every single one of your viewers to continue the prayers flowing. We need them all. We need to hold Mark up. We need to tell him that he is loved and God is on his side. and he will get through this with his loving family.
Yeah, and we most certainly will do that. And I know prayer is so very important. Elfing, we spoke to your daughter Anne a few months ago. You probably heard that in the clip, and she told us just how important your Catholic faith is to you and that you pray the rosary several times a day. I know you watch EWTN. And she also said that you and Mark would pray the rosary together while he was detained in Russia in prison. Tell us a little bit more about that and just how important your faith is to you, especially during all this time.
Well, we tried to coordinate it so we could be praying at the same time. And I did the same thing with my two sisters. So at 9:30 at night, we always prayed the rosary simultaneously. And I think it helped all of us. And I think particularly Mark. He has been going to some kind of a little church building that is on the premises, and he was able to walk there every day. And he said he walked there a couple times a day, and it gave him a lot of comfort because he felt like there was only an altar there, no seats, just an altar. But he said he stood in front of that altar and prayed every day. And our faith has really helped us through this whole ordeal, and we thank God for that.
Yeah, and I know Butler, your town, is a very close-knit community. I know everybody in Pittsburgh was praying for him as well. Anything special that is going to be planned for Mark when he gets back home? Maybe some special foods? I read that pizzelles are one of his favorite cookies, as are mine.
Yes, they are. I have them in the freezer. I don't know how good they'll be, but he likes wedding soup and he likes lasagna, and we're just going to ply him with food. We're just going to stuff him in them. But he has really never actually complained about the food in the prison, and I think he was grateful for whatever they gave him, except for cabbage and potatoes. He didn't care for that too much.
Well, that's wonderful. And I know that you guys are just going to hug on him so much when he gets home. Sasha, before I let you both go, anything else that maybe you want our viewers to know about this whole process and maybe going forward with Mark when he comes home?
So again, keep the prayers coming. We are obviously overjoyed that Mark is coming home, and the family's hearts go out to those who are still currently detained, whether that's in Russia or elsewhere. I believe that the American government will come for them and will rescue them just like it did with Mark. And so this is a great day for America. The process has been very long. There's been a lot of downs, lots of ups and downs, more downs than ups. And today is this high that the entire family is riding, of course. So this is a wonderful day for America. This is a wonderful day for Malphine, who has been an absolute champion for Mark, for her son. She has taken on the U.S. government. She filed a lawsuit against the U.S. government. She has met with the president. She has met with congressmen. She advocated for her son the best she could. And I believe it paid off. So credit goes to everybody who worked behind the scenes on this, but the biggest credit goes to this woman right here, who is a true mother in every sense and who brought her son home today.
That is so wonderful.
I can't take credit for that. I think the credit goes to Sasha and her group, but we're just grateful for everybody who has prayed, who talked about him, kept his name out into the public, and I think it all helped.
Well, thank you both so much for coming on today. What a wonderful day, and we will continue praying for all of you. And please tell Mark we're so glad he's home. God bless you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, in other news now, in the Middle East, the fate of the remaining hostages held by Hamas is up in the air, and the precarious ceasefire between Hamas and Israel is in danger of collapsing. All this comes as President Trump hosts the King of Jordan at the White House. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
Tracy, President Trump said today he believes Gaza could be a diamond and a tremendous asset for the Middle East. And he said people in the Middle East want peace and a good life like other people. Outside the West Wing, President Donald Trump welcomes the King of Jordan. Before the two sit down to talk, I asked the president,
President, is Saturday still your deadline for Hamas, sir? Sir, is Saturday still your deadline for Hamas? Do you think they'll listen to you?
Moments later, inside, the president further discussed his deadline for Hamas to release the hostages, and not a few at a time.
So I don't want to do 2, and then we do another 2 in another week, and then we do 4 in 3 weeks. No. They either have them out by Saturday at 12 o'clock, or all bets are off.
Hamas saying today that dozens of hostages would only be returned if all parties remain committed to a ceasefire deal reached last month. Hamas is accusing Israel of violating the ceasefire agreement, including by not allowing a surge of tents and shelters into Gaza. Meanwhile, the Israeli military says Shlomo Mansour, an 85-year-old Israeli man who is thought to be alive and in Hamas captivity, was killed during the 2023 attack and his body taken to Gaza. Also in the Oval Office, Trump discussing his proposal to develop Gaza, which he says would be magnificent for the Palestinians.
There is nothing to buy. It's Gaza. It's a war-torn area. We're going to take it. We're going to hold it. We're going to cherish it. We're going to get it going eventually, where a lot of jobs are going to be created for the people in the Middle East.
And the King of Jordan told reporters about his plan to rescue children in Gaza who are battling serious illness.
One of the things that we can do right away is take 2,000 children that are either cancer children or in a very ill state to Jordan as quickly as possible, and then wait for, I think, the Egyptians to present their plan on how we can work with the president to work on Gaza challenges.
If the ceasefire falls apart between Israel and Hamas, the war could resume next month in March. Meanwhile, in the Oval Office, President Trump said he doesn't think Hamas will make that Saturday deadline. He thinks Hamas wants to play the tough guy. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, as the Trump administration cracks down on immigration, Pope Francis addresses the bishops of the United States about the issue. The Holy Father also urged Catholics to consider the justness of laws and policies in light of the dignity and rights of people. EWTN Vatican News correspondent Colin Flynn has more.
Good evening, Tracy. Pope Francis had very sharp words for President Trump's plans for mass deportations in a letter that was sent to the U.S. bishops. The Pope warned that the forceful removal of people because of their illegal status deprives them of, quote, their inherent dignity and will end badly. Now, in this letter, Pope Francis said that he was concerned about what was happening in the United States, but he did say that nations have the right to defend themselves and keep their communities safe from criminals. But he went on to explain that, quote, the act of deporting people who, in many cases, have left their own land for reasons of extreme poverty, insecurity, exploitation, persecution, or serious deterioration of the environment, damages the dignity of men and women and of entire families, placing them in a state of particular vulnerability, end quote. Now, this isn't the first time that Pope Francis has spoken out against President Trump's plans on immigration and border security. During Trump's first administration, the Pope famously said that anyone who builds a wall to keep out migrants was, quote, not a Christian. And even last month, Pope Francis called the mass deportation plans a disgrace. In this letter to the U.S. bishops, Pope Francis referenced biblical stories of migration, the people of Israel, the book of Exodus, and Jesus' own experience, reminding the bishops of people's right to seek shelter and safety in other lands. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, who is a Catholic, he has defended the administration's deportation plans by citing a concept from Catholic theology known in Latin as ordo amoris. He explained that this concept delineates a hierarchy of care to family first, followed by neighbor, community, fellow citizens, and lastly, all others. But in this letter, Pope Francis appeared to correct the Vice President's understanding of this concept, writing, quote, Christian love is not a concentric expansion of interest that little by little extends to other people and groups. The true ordo amoris that people must promote is one in which we discover it by meditating constantly on the parable of the Good Samaritan. That is, the love that builds a fraternity open to all without exceptions, the Pope said. The White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said last week that more than 8,000 people have been arrested in immigration enforcement actions since Trump took office. Some have been deported, others have been held in federal prisons, and some are being held at the Guantanamo Bay Naval Base in Cuba. In Rome, Colin Flynn for EWTN News Nightly.
Well, the White House was quick to respond to the Pope's criticism. Border Czar Tom Homan oversees President Trump's mass deportation program. When asked about the letter, he lashed out at the Holy Father.
I got harsh words for the Pope. Pope want to fix the Catholic Church. I'm saying this as a lifelong Catholic. I was baptized Catholic. I was First Communion as a Catholic, Confirmation as a Catholic. He ought to fix the Catholic Church and concentrate on his work and leave border enforcement to us. He wants to attack us from securing our border. He's got a wall around the Vatican, does he not? So he's got a wall around to protect his people and himself, but we can't have a wall around the United States. So I wish he'd stick to the Catholic Church and fix that and leave border enforcement to us.
And with a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including budget battles. Speaker Johnson is striking a high note about the latest budget plan. So why are some Republicans thinking it sounds more like a B flat? We'll explain. And as fears grow over staff cuts at the FBI, how will it affect national security? We speak to a former special agent. Snow and ice storms are bearing down on the mid-Atlantic United States amid another stretch of cold weather. Virginia declared a state of emergency ahead of the storm, while many schools and government offices throughout the state were closed today. The heaviest snow is forecast in portions of northern and central Virginia. The snow is expected to change into rain as temperatures increase Wednesday afternoon. Well, if you use Google Maps in the United States, well, then you may have noticed something a little different. The navigation service now shows the newly labeled Gulf of America. This followed President Trump's Sunday proclamation aboard Air Force One, declaring February 9th Gulf of America Day. The president made the move while flying over the Gulf. The Republican-controlled Congress is going in different directions on budget and spending plans. Pressure is building on House Speaker Mike Johnson to deliver on President Donald Trump's legislative agenda. But others on the Hill are also offering their own proposals. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosellis has more. Eric.
Good evening. This is not what Republican lawmakers had in mind when they vowed to get off to a quick start to pass President Trump's priorities. And even today, there's still uncertainty about what's next, although Speaker Johnson says a budget plan is starting to come together.
We'll be rolling out the details of that probably by tonight. If they notice a markup, they can do it by Thursday, and we are right on the schedule that we need to be on.
Democrats continue to highlight the Republicans' plan includes tax cuts for the wealthy and cuts in Medicaid. The speaker says Medicaid is not on the chopping block, but says there could be changes to find waste.
Medicaid is infamous for fraud, waste, and abuse. I mean, by some estimates, large percentages of the dollars that are allocated there are wasted and stolen. And so we do right to go into those programs and find that and show the people what's happened and make sure it doesn't happen again.
Meanwhile, members of the conservative House Freedom Caucus have come out with their own plan. $200 billion in new funding to rebuild the military and secure the southern border, plus raise the debt ceiling by $4 trillion. Democrat Caucus Chair Congressman Pete Aguilar says Republicans are not asking their side for input.
Republicans still don't want to arrive at a top-line number when it is spelled out in law. Our expectation is that as we get closer to March 14th, we would hope that their outreach becomes more real and that their discussions with us become more substantive.
And Senate Budget Committee Chair Lindsey Graham is working on his own plan. It contains $175 billion to secure the border and $150 billion in new military spending. He claims the spending will be paid for by reducing in other areas of the government. Bottom line, everyone is doing their own thing up here. There is no unity. And all this is happening as the clock continues to wind down. A looming government shutdown will take place just after midnight on March 15th if lawmakers can't pass an extension. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Our Republican Congressman Nancy Mace made bombshell allegations on the House floor late last night. During nearly an hour-long speech, Mace named and accused 4 South Carolina men of multiple sex crimes against her and other women. One was her ex-fiancé.
I'm living proof that even as a member of Congress, I found myself face to face with the darkest corners of humanity.
Congresswoman Mace gave examples of her personal experiences as a domestic violence and sexual assault victim. She called out the South Carolina Attorney General, saying that she thought he did not do enough in the investigation. The Attorney General fired back, saying that his office has not received any reports or requests for assistance from any law enforcement or prosecution agencies. Democratic leadership spoke about the allegations.
Very serious allegations that she's made. I'll leave it. That's between her and her constituents. On the timing. I just read a report. I have not seen any of the over hour-long discussion on her floor speech. Very serious allegations, and I would hope that law enforcement will take a look if there is something there.
Mace's ex-fiancé is still being investigated, but he denies the accusation, saying that he will cooperate fully with any necessary legal processes to clear his name. Well, in a whirlwind first month in office for President Trump, a number of buyouts and staffing cuts have been put into effect. One of the agencies affected is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This week, the Office of Personnel Management asked the FBI for a list of probationary employees. They also want justifications for keeping anyone who's worked at the FBI for fewer than 2 years. The move has sparked fears that staff cuts are coming. And joining us now with more insight into the FBI is Catherine Schweit, a former FBI special agent. Catherine, great to be with you today. We appreciate it. First off, can you just give us, a range of the crimes and cases that the FBI investigates for those who may not know?
I think it's everything that you can think of and then probably more. So we're special agents, so we're responsible, and I'm a former agent, but responsible for any crimes that we're assigned. So when the Lindbergh baby was kidnapped, suddenly the FBI was responsible for kidnappings. When bank robberies got to be a big problem, suddenly the FBI was responsible for bank robberies. So it's a huge array of crimes, but not every crime. Local law enforcement their job is to enforce the peace. So they have kind of a broader jurisdiction within their jurisdiction, broader authority, but the FBI works everything from transnational, sex trafficking to drug cases to cyber infiltrations.
Yeah, Catherine, let me ask you this. What are the biggest concerns to national security if the FBI is hampered?
Well, I think hampered is a kind of a charged word. No offense intended. But I think the reality is that less people, less work gets done. And I think the biggest fear that I have as an agent, former agent who worked, in a field office, I worked in the state of Wisconsin, for instance, is when the FBI doesn't have personnel to help, the burden falls on state and local tribal law enforcement. Because I worked a kidnapping case in my county, in Racine County, and in one of my counties, and we had a woman who was kidnapped who was she was in her 80s, and when the sheriff's office called, they said, what are we, come and help us, what can we do? We deployed 50 agents in there to get that woman back alive who was actually kidnapped. Law enforcement locally doesn't have that ability to expand.
Catherine, run out of time here, but I want to ask you this before I let you go. On Friday, a federal judge signed off on an agreement that forbids the public release of the list of FBI employees who worked on the January 6th probe. If you can talk to us a little bit more about that, and what's the danger if those names are released?
I worked counterterrorism and counterintelligence for the first 15 years of my career, and then I switched over when the Sandy Hook massacre happened. And I became the king of, unfortunately, the person who was responsible for mass shootings. When I worked national security matters as a single mother in Wisconsin with my 2 kids in their own home, I didn't want my name to be out anywhere, because I was concerned that the terrorist organizations that I was working on would track me down and track my kids down and do harm to me. The domestic terrorism issue that we have in the United States, which is reflective of the January 6th event, those individuals who committed acts or who were convicted of committing acts, they live here in the United States. They're our neighbors. They have different political views than their other neighbors. That's great. But the risk of releasing the name of somebody whose job was to follow the Constitution and follow the orders, lawful orders by a judge, you run the risk of having people go after them in a way that is very dangerous, because it's, whether it's conspiracy theory or mob thinking, we don't need that. And I think that our job is to protect all citizens, and that includes the agents and analysts who worked on these jobs.
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think that I would love for everybody to kind of take a step back and realize that FBI personnel are hired not for their pay, right? They're hired to help abide by the Constitution and protect our civil rights. And you want that, I want that, everybody wants that. So I think maybe a step back to say, these aren't some images up in Washington. These are human beings who are here trying to work with state and local tribal law enforcement officers to keep us all safe from threats in the United States and threats that come from outside of the United States.
And Catherine, thank you so much for your insights. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly is a feast day close to the hearts of millions of Catholics worldwide. We'll take you to Lourdes to show you the celebration. Plus, St. Teresa of Calcutta now has her own feast day. Can you guess which day it is? We'll tell you next. Has appointed a new archbishop for the Diocese of Detroit. Today, the Vatican announced that Tucson Bishop Edward Weissenberger will succeed Archbishop Alan Vigneron. You may remember back in 2018, Bishop Weissenberger made headlines regarding immigration. He suggested that any Catholic taking part in the president's zero-tolerance border policy should be punished under church law, such as being denied communion. Why much beloved saint now has a feast day inscribed in the Roman calendar. St. Teresa of Calcutta, affectionately known as Mother Teresa, will now be celebrated on September 5th. That is the day that she died in 1997. The Dicastery for Divine Worship and the Discipline of the Sacraments announced the news today from Rome. They also provided the liturgical texts to be used for the optional memorial. Well, finally tonight, as we mentioned, it is the feast day of Our Lady of Lourdes, and thousands of pilgrims from around the world flocked to the Sanctuary of Lourdes for a day that began with Mass. The day marks the anniversary of the first apparition of Mary to Bernadette Subihu, who later events included the account of the apparition as well as a rosary. And we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.